Great. So when you write a book, you have the time, or maybe you might have the time.
Some people do. Yeah.
It gives you that space or that time to think about the world around you and maybe change your understanding of things or think about things in a different way. How did this book change you? And I'll ask that to both you and Joe.
Well, I definitely gained an appreciation for the importance of the difference between a semicolon and a comma, and
to the Harbor Grace excursion with the voice to have.
Books really saved my life.
well, hello everybody. How do you do? I'm Wab Kinew. It's the first rhyme of many in this section.
Not enough children.
That's right. So it's pretty short, so I'm just going to do the whole thing, if you're all okay with that. Okay. There's a power in these lands, one that's been here many years, strong enough to make you stand and forget all of your fears. It started in the past with the blast of light and thunder. Ancient ones looked up and beheld the sky with wonder. Under starry nights west, Sacagawea led Lewis and Clark so America could spread. Plus she healed them when they were almost dead. The men got the credit, but should she have instead? Before he made the big leagues or won Olympic gold, little Jim Thorpe ran all the time, I'm told. His twin died at boarding school, leaving Jim alone. All he knew to do was run, so ran the whole way home. Finally, his dad said, Jim, don't run away. No matter how far you run, brother's gonna stay. It might be tough now, but you will be something. Before you leave, my son, I want to tell you one thing. You're a person who matters. Yes, it's true. Now go show the world what a person who matters can do. You're a person who matters. Yes, it's true. Now go show the world what a person who matters can do. Sous la Flèche Picot pushed doors till they let her in. The mayor called her too dark or even too feminine. But she kept working hard, even as they mocked her, till she earned a name that stuck. Now they call her doctor. In a foster home, Beatrice Hart reigned free, wrote a book about her life and called it April Rain Tree. You need to stand strong, be Pega Magabo, who fought for freedom abroad and right here at home. When you feel tired, remember Te Wauze clear. She walked a sad trail, but shed no tear. Carried sweat rocks the whole way so culture could live. When they asked her why she did what she did, she simply said, you are people who matter. Yes, it's true. Now go show the world what people who matter can do. You are people who matter. Yes, it's true. Now go show the world what people who matter can do. These are few my heroes, maybe now you're heroes too. Let's look ahead at our lives, think of what we want to do. Maybe be a doctor or a movie star, it might happen. Maybe we do both, like our friend Evan Adams. We're like John Harrington in space, no wait, Mars. We're like Carey Price standing tall against the charge, like Juanique Horn Miller, hurt but keep right on. Become captain of our country, our spirit's too strong. Tecumseh said, perfect your life, make it serve the people. Crazy Horse lived free, his spirit like an eagle. Natnoko was a woman, like most a true warrior, strong and independent, fierce as any man before her. Remember, always do right, try to be positive. If you ever do wrong, make it up and please forgive. All paths are open to you, the brave, you take a stand. Wherever you go, these words echo through the land. We are people who matter. Yes, it's true. Now let's show the world what people who matter can do. We are people who matter. Yes, it's true. Now let's show the world what people who matter can do.
Thanks so much, Wab. The book Go Show the World is about a celebration of Indigenous heroes throughout time. There's a powerful quote on both the inside and of the cover and the end of the book that states, we are people who matter, yes, it's true, now let's show the world what people can do. When I read this quote, I thought back to my time growing up as an Indigenous young person in Northern Ontario and started thinking about the lack of representation and how inspiring, empowering stories, how they're really underrepresented. And it's a really powerful quote that could perhaps begin to help inspire Indigenous young people to explore their identity and their place in society. And my first question to you is, you've noted that the book came out of two inspirations, Barack Obama's book of the I Sing and Canaan song, Take a Minute. How did those inform this children's book?
Well, the Obama children's book is one that I love to read to my kids when they were younger. And in that book, he's just highlighting all these different American heroes like Lincoln and Martin Luther King and Helen Keller and all these people over the years. But he framed it in a way where he's reading it to his daughters, and he's telling his daughters, whatever good things they did, that lives within you. And it's like a message of hope and inspiration and upliftment, which I really liked. And then Kanon, who's a Canadian rapper, and he has a song, Take a Minute, where he was talking about like Mandela and Gandhi, and he's kind of shouting out his heroes in rhyme form. So that's sort of one of the inspirations I had to do it as a rap song. And it's like a spoken word type of rap song. But I guess the other reason is because kids, like now I'm a politician, if I show up to talk to a room full of kids, they don't want to hear me talk at them for an hour of a policy. But if I show up and do a little rap, then they might be more interested in that. So I guess it's kind of a way to get the younger members in the audience on board and hopefully paying attention so they could pick up some of the other stories that are shared in the book.
That's great.
Yeah.
I remember the song, the rap song. Actually, I was teaching at the time, and I remember it was a really popular song. A really inspiring and empowering song for young people as well to listen to. The book is written as rhyming lyrics inspired by song lyrics, which you mentioned. And can you share what the writing process looked like or was like? And how did you take lyrics from a rap song that you wrote earlier titled Heroes and shape it into a children's picture book that gives space, particularly to historic and modern day stories of Indigenous peoples?
Yeah, so it's rhyme, so I just have like a big version of the alphabet in front of me, and when I need to rhyme doctor, I just go octor, boctor, coctor, doctor. No, just kidding. Is that how everyone does rhymes? No, I'm joking. That's not actually how I wrote it. But Joe was worried for a second there. Jeez. By the way, this is Joe Morse. He's done an amazing job with all the images in this book. Thank you. And we just met each other about 2 hours ago for the first time. So we collaborated on this virtually.
Yeah, virtual friends.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're virtually friends now.
Yeah.
But I guess the writing process was, I started with Jim Thorpe. The chorus, the refrain, it's inspired by something his dad told him. So the thing about Jim Thorpe's twin dying in the boarding school and him running home, he actually ran home several times, and it's one of the ways that they figured out he was athletic, is because they'd open the train and he'd run all the way across a state line back home to his family. And they did it multiple times. And finally, the last time, his dad told him, Jim, you can't run away, because if you do, they're going to take your younger siblings, and they're not ready to go. But I want you to go and show the world what an Indian can do, right? And so that's kind of always stuck with me over the years, that like his dad like sent him out on this mission, and then he went out and did all these amazing things like Olympic medals, pro baseball, pro football, and all of that. And then writing this book, I realized like that was kind of a message that I wanted to hang it on, but I wanted to broaden it out and not just be for Indigenous kids, but be for kids from all backgrounds. So for me, it's like the two sides of, yes, you matter. But now that you matter, go and share your gift with the world, right? And so that's kind of what the writing process was. But then Joe came in, and he brought it to life in a much more beautiful way than I even imagined. So.
Well, it was interesting because one of the things that I saw was that refrain. And the refrain in the book, it changes because it starts personally, and then it goes to a collective, but then it goes to the inclusive. And to me, that was like, as an illustrator, you're trying to find that thread. You're trying to find that tissue that connects everything. And that, to me, that refrain was, because of the title and because of the history, it was such a beautiful thing to think about that as the theme of the book, sense of connecting all of the pictures together.
Mm-hmm. And to me, that really is important. And I should acknowledge there's this YouTube and social media account called We Matter that reaches out to young Indigenous people primarily, and it's an anti-suicide thing. And like, it's so important right now. I think there was just a young girl in Northern Ontario, 13 years old, who took her own life. A few years ago, it was my community, Onigaming, that was in the news for a similar reason. And it's not just Indigenous kids like who struggle with self-harm and ideation of suicide. I remember being in Bracebridge not too long ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and a young non-native guy came up to me. He's like kind of looked dark in the sense that like he had a big beard and is wearing a hoodie and covered low, and he told me, I listened to your music and it really helped me through some difficult times when I was thinking of self-harm. And so that was like one of like I think the secondary motivations behind writing the book is like I'm trying to think of like what can you do to tell like a 10-year-old kid, who has no hope, or what can you do to reach out to like a prepubescent young person who doesn't have any hope. And I think that message that first of all, yes, you matter, but then two, that we want to see what you can do and we want you to stick around here, was really important for me. So I wanted to be able to have something in there that I think young people could glom onto. And so for me, what Joe did with the images, like it just like took any feeling that I had in the text and it just brought it to so much more of an emotional impact with the visuals. And so I was really, really blown away with what you came up with. Yeah.
I think one of the things that I thought was remarkable was the diversity of heroes, Indigenous heroes, that you selected throughout history all the way to today. And how did you decide who to feature in the book, and what was the process involved in deciding who to select or who to include?
Well, I started with like Jim Thorpe and a few other people who are pretty well known, but there's some other folks who are not as well known that I know I wanted to include as well. Like this one woman here, she's pretty remarkable, Susan LaFlèche-Picot. She's one of the first Indigenous physicians in the U.S., and she became a medical doctor, about 150 years ago, right? So at a time when it was even rare for a woman to become an MD, she got off the reserve. She toured around the northeastern United States to different Victorian women's societies and pitched them on educating her, and she fundraised and paid for her own education that way, went through medical school, and then she went back to her community, the Omaha Nation, and practiced medicine for many years, trying to improve the well-being of her people. And like, to me, that's an amazing story, like regardless of what community you come from or, cultural background you have, that's an amazing story. So I had researched different people like her and knew that I wanted to include them. I tried also to have representation, because the book is about broadening the representation in literature. So I wanted to have like gender balance amongst the characters, and there's also regional representation, like there's Métis, there's Anishinaabe, there's Lakota, and then also like some are historic, some are contemporary, and they're from all different fields, like business, sports, arts.
You also included youth as well, I noticed, which is really rare.
Yeah. And then this one is really important to me because I don't know if she's really been shared in writing too many times before, but this is a story that I heard in the oral tradition. So I heard about this woman growing up, but I've never read about her. And her name is Tewauzi. She is a Ponca woman, and she's part of the Trail of Tears. So when people were being forcibly relocated into Oklahoma from across the U.S. and they were being relocated to Oklahoma. So the story goes, they came to her community and the cavalry told her that you can only bring what you can carry. And then they were marched out of their home community at gunpoint. What she chose to carry was the rocks from her sweat lodge. So in our sweat lodge ceremony, we use these rocks like maybe about this big, right? So you can imagine how heavy they are, and then they're heated to be glowing hot and then brought into the lodge, and then you pray with them, and it's a purification ceremony. But her march, the one thing she chose to carry was the rocks, right? And she marched, hundreds of miles to Oklahoma. She brought the rocks on her back, and I'm proud to say that today her descendants, the Camp family of the Ponca Nation of Oklahoma, still practice the sweat lodge ceremony, and they still practice their traditional culture. And so again, even if you're a non-Indigenous person, to me, the height and severity of what she was confronted with and the extent to which her determination and perseverance overcame that, to me is a testament to the human spirit. And the fact that it, resulted in the survival of her culture, to me, was all the more inspirational. So I wanted to include people like her as well, because sometimes the heroes in our community aren't properly recognized, but I think that one is definitely one of the real highlights. And this is actually like her great-granddaughter, who is kind of the model for the picture, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Casey
Yeah.
Camp Hornick. So like if you follow like Standing Rock and a lot of the activism that goes on in the States around Indigenous people fighting climate change, like she's one of the activists. And you kind of did a lot with research, and not kind of, you did do a lot with research in the
Yes.
book, I should say.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about like how you brought people like Casey or other figures in?
Obviously, it's really important for me. I'm not Indigenous, so Wab he was the guide, and it was really, really important. I think it's important also to understand the role of an illustrator. My job is to bring the words to life and to bring the visuals to life. And so you have to do that with an incredible amount of research and respect. And so one of the generosity, Wab was amazing, because he was kind of had some other things he was doing in Manitoba. I really didn't know that, by the way. I was just like, what's with this? Why does he get back? No, he was really generous in the sense of his guidance and his comments, and the sense of sort of seeing these are different kinds of paths that we could go in the sense of telling some of these stories. But for me, I love research and I love nonfiction. So to me, that was the big thing, was I wanted to get all of this right. And you're right, because I couldn't find anything that was oral tradition. So I really had to depend on you in the sense of getting information on some of the pieces. One of the things that I was intrigued by was timelines. Because again, I'm used to, I do nonfiction, it's like it goes 18th century, 19th century, 20th century. This book? No. Right, so this is the first thing, the challenge of dealing with the text was that you didn't have that same kind of timeline. What was involved in that for you?
Well, I think the structure of the story comes from the like verse, chorus, verse structure of the text, but like thematically, the structure is that it's bookended by reference to the land. So the whole idea behind the book, I think, is sharing Indigenous heroes to a wider audience, including both Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. Like, it's written in a way, I hope, that people from any background can find some inspiration or excitement or some kind of appeal from the people in there. But one of the things that I want to get across is this idea of, even if you are Indigenous, you're non-Indigenous, by virtue of you being in North America today, your identity has been shaped by Indigenous cultures and Indigenous peoples. You all live in a place called Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Those are all Indigenous names, right? Even in the States, Seattle, Chicago, right? And those are just kind of quick examples of how Indigenous languages and cultures have shaped your identity as a Torontonian, Ontarian, Canadian. And so to me, it's really important for people to understand that. But what does that mean if we have an Indigenous connection or an Indigenous component to our national character or collective identity? Well, to me, one of the things that really unites a lot of Indigenous nations is the connection to the land. And so that's why the book kind of begins and ends with a connection to the land. So in the beginning, it's there's a power in these lands, one that's been here many years. And at the end of the book, it's these words echo through the land. Right? Yeah. And so that's one of the things that I hope to get across to the young reader or whoever it is who's enjoying the book, is just to have them think about, well, first off, hopefully they like the heroes and think they're cool people. But beyond that, that they also think like, well, I'm here now, and there have been people here for a long time doing important, interesting things. And what does it mean for me, now that I'm here, to have a connection to this land? And then maybe if we start, having more of a relationship to our surroundings and thinking more in that sort of way, then we can think about some of the big issues of our time, like climate change and some of these big issues in a better kind of way. So for me, that was sort of where the structure came from, is like rather than just a chronology, it's more so it's grounded in the land, and then I just wanted to kind of like highlight the people in just what felt like an organic way. So beginning with the land, and then I thought you should talk about the ancient ones, like the Anasazi, who were here first, and then you should talk about a historic figure, and then in order to get to the chorus, we need to hear from Jim Thorpe. And then so we got to get to Jim Thorpe right away. And then we get there, and then it's like, all right, who comes next? And then, so that's kind of how the timeline of it came together.
It's clear that the book was a collaboration between the two of you. I'm looking through the illustrations, and they're beautifully done. However, I'm sure there's lots of conversations that took place between both of you to ensure or demonstrate the authenticity or respect for respect for the Indigenous heroes through the illustrations. Can you provide some examples of maybe what those conversations might have looked like, or some things that you did in the book to ensure authenticity and respect that was given?
Well, I guess we could just forward everyone who's interested the email chain that we exchanged back and forth. You could just read through it if you want.
It was long, involved.
We should shout out, I think, Lynn and Jessica, if you want to wave to everyone, because they're basically the editors. Like, they have fancy titles from the literary world, but they're basically the editors of the book. And they're like the intermediaries and interlocutors that allowed us to collaborate with one another. And
Jessica as well, working with me
a
lot. So you're right in the sense that it was really important that the people of the land, that was the first thing that came to my mind. And by the way, I've never done a landscape before. I wasn't supposed to say that. But to me, it was like, every single thread, it had to be a landscape. So there had to be seasons. There had to be different kinds of places that are important, and that was one of the things that we talked about as well is sacred places, and the sense of representing them and not representing them. So that was interesting for me in a sense of understanding that. Right.
Yeah, because you could see a lot of them brought to life here, like the Anasazi of Chaco Canyon here, in the opening panels about the power in the lands. It's been here many years.
And we talked a lot about the images that were in the sky.
Right, because I think in an earlier version it was more of like a West Coast kind of design, but he did more of an Anishinaabe. So this is more like where I come from in northwestern Ontario, and also around the Great Lakes area, Agawa Canyon.
Yeah.
The pictographs and the rock paintings and stuff like that brought to life. So bringing it to the ancient ones in this territory. But then you also see like, obviously her, but the sacred lands of, the Grand Canyons. And then to me, when I first went through the book in close to its final form and was like, because it's all electronic, so I'm like swiping through the pages, this almost made me cry. Because and if I was a normal person, I would have cried, but I just I don't really, that's a whole other conversation we can do another time. But this was very moving for me. And it's basically Standing Rock. So I was wondering maybe if you could just talk about, because we didn't talk about it first. Like Joe just kind of went there with it. Yeah. And then I don't know if you could just explain what your thoughts were.
With the text, with the words, try to be positive. If you ever do wrong, make up and please forgive. All paths are open to you, the brave, you take a stand. Wherever you go, these words echo through the land. It just seemed like an elder giving wisdom. And so I really felt it was really important that there was an elder and a younger person in this piece. And that was the first image I did, was just two people sort of joining hands across the spread. And then I started thinking about the land and what's happening in our land. And so I did a clear-cutting image. But then it just didn't seem urgent enough. And then there's obviously something that's very urgent that's going on. And so that's when I just said to you, I didn't show you any image, I just said, what about Standing Rock? And that was it for you. You were like, oh yeah, I've been there, I have friends there, this is really an important piece. So then it was building the image, and it was really important. Like I really like the young girl looking at the older woman and sort of saying, that sense of connection between the elders and the youth, and it's really, really important.
But like a lot of panels in the book, it has a lot of detail that kind of rewards like a closer look or repeat viewing. Like you see like the kind of extraction industry security forces on the hill, which is like, there's a hill at Standing Rock, like just like this, close to the front lines of where that was happening. But if you look closely, the banners and the signs and everything, Mini Wachoni, water is life, defend the sacred, like this is like the no dapple even, all from Standing Rock. And then importantly, like if you look at the faces of the other people, they're not all Indigenous people. In fact, my assistant sent me an Instagram direct message today, and she said, "Look, that one has pink hair. That's me." He's like, how did the artist know? But for me, the reason why it was so emotionally fraught or so emotionally powerful is because the whole idea of having an Indigenous content that can appeal to a non-Indigenous world, or broader than just the Indigenous world, to me was illustrated at Standing Rock when that protest was happening. Because you had a movement that was grounded in Indigenous cultural norms and Indigenous culture, Mini Wachoni, water is life, but making a stand for everybody, like so that all of our kids and grandkids can have a future on this planet and not have a scorched earth to look forward to. And when we were there and when we visited, it was not just Indigenous people. It was obviously Indigenous-led, not in the sense it was just Indigenous people at the front, but Indigenous-led in the sense of, like, you know, elders and activists kind of talking, getting the crowd hyped up. But it was also many non-Indigenous people, maybe even like a majority non-Indigenous people there. And so, like, the whole idea of this, like, new interface between Indigenous ideas and a non-Indigenous sphere was brought to life, I think, totally in this frame. So I really like that. And then this one kind of takes it, if this one's too political for you, then this one is kind of, it has the same message, but it's just in a more
it's just
straight
kids.
up way.
It's kids, the Northern Lights, and just joy of just being, you know, being again in the world.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
That's great. So when you write a book, you have the time, or maybe you might have the time.
Some people do.
Yeah.
It gives you that space or that time to think about the world around you and maybe change your understanding of things or think about things in a different way. How did this book change you? And I'll ask that to both you and Joe.
Well, I definitely gained an appreciation for the importance of, like, the difference between, like, a semicolon and a comma and all that, because this took longer than my other book, even though the word count is way less. And I'm not just saying that to tease Lynn and Jessica, but it was very interesting because it's like a rap. So there's, like, a lot of, like, contractions and, you know, slang type things. And so, like, trying to make that, like, publishable was, like, a whole process and journey. And then that's to say nothing of, you know, Joe and his whole, because that's before even the illustration happened. So I definitely gained a fine appreciation for all the work that goes into a children's book. And I think even more so, like, thinking back to the books that I like the Obama book, or like the like Robert Munch books that I saw when I was a kid, like, you gain, like, an appreciation for the form. It's like, it's very economical, and it's just like the simplicity of it is what you're really trying to go for, right? It's not about saying the most flowery thing. It's like saying something in a very kind of not simple, but like a very kind of elegant and sparse kind of way.
Yeah. Like, for me, one of the things was there's a lot of hidden elements in the book. And so I really look forward to kids being able to find those. Like, you know, the Shoshone people, snake people, well, guess what? The river's a snake. So it's like finding different pieces in the book. And so for me, well, obviously it was an incredible opportunity to work with you, because the words are so powerful. Like, I read through them and I just said, this is an important book. This is a book that I hope every kid reads. I hope every person reads. It's a critical book, and it's a critical book for us in this country, and what we need to do and need to be involved with. And some of the final note that you wrote to me was so incredible around the reason why you wrote this book. So the whole thing has been, like, it was 2 years of my life, and it was utter delight. It was amazing, because this is the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. This is the most work I've ever done, and each piece just felt like I was being involved in something so much bigger than myself. So it was really powerful.
That's beautiful.
That's great. There's really powerful, incredible messages found throughout the book, Go Show the World and a Celebration of Heroes, and there's a lot just within that title itself. I'd like to read one of the passages that really affected me and ask you sort of what's the lesson or takeaway that you want people to know or to understand from this, and how might you demonstrate it in your own life. So the passage is, and I think you've already said it, Joe, it's a really impactful one, right? Remember, always do right, try to be positive. If you ever do wrong, make it up and please forgive. All paths are open to you, the brave, you take a stand wherever you go. These words echo throughout the land. So just looking for sort of what's the lesson or takeaway within this.
It's just like, what would you want any kid to know, like if you couldn't be there to tell them the lesson yourself? I think that, that captures most of what you would want a kid to have in life. Like, try and be a good person. You're going to mess up. So when you do, make amends. But the world is yours. You can do anything you want. You go out there, make the most of life. Life is not to be sad or to suffer. Life is to enjoy and to be happy, to make the most of it. And then, that knowledge has been here for a long, long time. It echoes down through the generations to you, and may you be a part of ensuring that it continues to echo through these lands for many generations more.
That's great, thank you.
But it made it rhyme.
Joe, did you have any questions? You had some good questions that you were hoping to talk about too.
Let's see. Oh, yeah. Will there be a Go Show the World again? He asks expectantly and happily. Well, there's lots of stories.
Right? There are.
So, what's next for you? Like, in the sense of heroes, and.
Yeah, we were joking about it, like keep showing the world, or like go show the world again, like go show the world the next generation.
Yeah. Redux.
Yes. Like Evan Monday gets credit for the next generation joke. That's a good one. So I definitely think that there's a need to continue highlighting some of these great heroes, because obviously we didn't cover the gamut. There's so many more people that you could continue to highlight. So I think this is something that I really wanted to do, and I've tried to do at other points in my career, either through journalism or through writing and things like that, is to highlight positive stories, inspiration. Part of it is that teachers come up to me and talk to me, and they say, like, we need more age-appropriate material to teach kids, but then also, not just age-appropriate material, we also want, it's important to talk about, stories like residential school, but we also want age-appropriate material that's maybe has a different tone, or that focuses on, success stories, or focuses on this, or focuses on that. Like, there just needs to be more resources all across the board. So that was one of the other motivations. But in terms of thinking through the future, it's an interesting question. Like, I think that there might be more to do with this one, like, like a video or like YouTube kind of resource for kids and for parents. So I think that that's important. But in terms of the broader representation, it's something that I want to do more of in life. When I was a little kid, the representation that I saw of Indigenous people, it came primarily through CBC, because especially when we're staying on the reserve in the summer, the only channels we had was CBC and HBO. And at the time, HBO was not what it is today. Back then, HBO was like, they'd show one movie on a loop for like a month straight. And it was, when I was 8, it was Killer Clowns from Outer Space. So,
that's a good movie.
yeah, you can only watch it like 10 times before you've had enough. But the other one was CBC, and that was my portal to the outside world. And the representation that I would see on there was like Cowboys and Indians, or the Oka crisis, right? And so like, then coming back to school in the fall, and then like the only Indigenous kid in the classroom, what am I supposed to do with that? Like, what is my relationship to the society and country that I live in, if that's like the framework that has been built for me, right? So I was lucky to grow up in a family where I was exposed to the Indigenous heroes and heard the stories through the oral tradition, through books, through movies, whatever. But the thing that I didn't have, and that I hope generations today have, is validation from the mainstream that these stories matter, and that these stories are not just those people's stories. These stories are part of our history, together. And so I think that's where, if we're going to do more with this, then may it continue to serve that goal of not just Indigenous stories for Indigenous kids, but also that Canada, the U.S., recognizes that this is part of our collective story.
Yeah.
So there's a shift happening across in the education system right now, and educators are definitely looking for new resources, and families are definitely calling for resources that are more empowering, authentic, truthful. How can this book help to change conversations or what's going on in the classrooms?
I think there's the straight-up interpretation of, like, in the post-TRC era, educators have been leading a lot of the implementation of reconciliation, I would say. And so teachers, I think, are very progressive when it comes to this issue and want to, notwithstanding your notwithstanding clause, loving premier.
Glad you slipped that in.
I'm gonna tread lightly here, because last time I brought up notwithstanding clause, my mom threw a magazine across the room at me. And she's here tonight, so. But notwithstanding like that temporary setback, which I don't think is really gonna set back the educational movement, right? Because I think that ship has sailed, so to speak. So I think educators are leading it, but I think that there's still, the ship was launched, and I guess it's bad to use a ship analogy when you're talking about decolonization. But it's like the ship has set sail without necessarily knowing the destination, if that makes sense. So we launched a process of indigenization and reconciliation without knowing, because we can't know what it's going to look like when we get to wherever we're going. And so we're trying to build it on the fly as we go. And so I think there's still a lot of questions. The questions that I hear from educators are things like, I'm a non-Indigenous educator, I want to do good, how can I approach this in a meaningful way without being guilty of cultural appropriation, right? That's a very good question, right? Some of the other questions are, are we doing proper representation? Is it a one-size-fits-all approach? How localized does it have to be? How can we generalize if we have to honor the local Indigenous traditions and nations wherever we are? Can we tell a broader narrative? So there's all this stuff that's being sorted out on the fly. So I think people should just jump into the conversation. This is, I think, our contribution to the conversation, and I hope that if we all engage in that exchange together, then we'll figure out how to land that sucker where we're trying to get it to go.
That's great, thanks. Joe, did you have one last question that you'd like to ask?
So you have a couple readers at home. Mm-hmm. What do they think of the book?
Well, one's a teenage boy, so good. With a one-word review.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Well, my 10-year-old son read it. He was the first one to read it once we got the copy at home. And, he kind of read it quietly to himself, and then I asked him what he thought. He said, it's inspirational. And I thought that was great. Because usually, the dad to a 10-year-old boy is just trying to make fun of his dad and, say the dad is not cool. So that was very meaningful for me that he enjoyed it. And so I definitely think that that's probably the best review that I got so far.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. How about you? Your kids are a little bit
my kids are
different ages.
My kids are both artists as well, so it's really all they care about is, can they get the computer now that I'm not on it? So no, I think the kids they're really interested as well, in the sense of they could see the images growing, they could see all of the sketches and all the different sort of the materials coming in, and so for them it was just, they're really excited to see how it comes together and how it sort of finishes. And it's the magic of a book, right? All of a sudden it comes in, it's like this package, and it's an object, and that's the thing that's so beautiful about books, is that they have a spirit, they live. There's something that you look through and feel and engage with, and there's this beautiful thread that goes from page to page that you have to feel as you turn those pages. So that's something my kids have always been involved with books, and so I think I got okay, it's good. Yeah. They're 16 and 19. So.
That's great. So thank you very much to both
you.
Wab and Joe for talking and sharing about the new book, Go Show the World, A Celebration of Indigenous Heroes. It's definitely an inspiring book for those that read it. Definitely a lot you can learn and take from it.